Hello there, this is Anna from Northeast Animal Rights, and we're doing another one of our Saturday Spotlight interviews. Today, we're delighted to welcome back Dr. Roger Yates, who is a highly respected activist. So, welcome and thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, and thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. We're going to go straight to these questions. Now, the questions I mentioned before we came on air, they're very, very wordy. So please bear with me when I kind of like get all the words out. But it's very important that we try to get to the crux of the things we're going to talk about this morning. So within every movement, by its very nature, things will change quickly and keep on evolving. And sometimes they regress as well. Now, you've been involved in animal rights for a long, long time. What changes have you? I'm not trying to imply that you're old, but you have been involved in it for
No,
quite a
I
long
am
time.
though, so don't worry about that.
So what changes have you seen and what are your thoughts on what you've seen?
Well, I would say the movement feels different now, to be honest, Anna. It felt more communal. When I was involved with the SABs and local groups and this kind of stuff, and there was a lot of cooperation at the grassroots level. I think some of that has gone. It's a little bit like more like a bunch of businesses now in a weird way, and it's to do with marketing and branding and that kind of stuff. And there wasn't that before. It felt differently. And I think that one of the main changes is the politics in the movement, which is reflecting the changes of the politics in society in general. And so I've always been interested in movement issues, as you know. And so there is a problem when, in fact, I mean, sociologists talk about this, when movements take off, become more and more popular, more and more people join, but those people joining don't have the same core values of the people who started the movement. Now, this is what's happened to the vegan movement in particular. And so we've got a lot of people kind of on the right coming in. And the truth is, and there's a lot of research about this even, that we are a left-leaning movement. If you look at the research, people tend to have kind of liberal values. There's always been a few kind of anarchic values thrown in there. But even people like Tom Reagan talked about even the jobs, that people would have public service, rather than the private sector jobs, that kind of stuff. So nurses and doctors, social workers, this kind of stuff. So, and a lot of women in the movement, of course, which is still the case. And as usual, the kind of feminist problem that, women's voices tend to get drowned out. And all of those issues kind of remain. But it is true that it's feeling different now. That's what I'd say. I'm a little bit pessimistic at the moment. I've got to say, But then, we do talk in sociology about movements going peaks and troughs. I think we might be in a bit of a trough now, but
Yeah,
there's always a peak
yeah,
coming, So,
yeah, hopefully.
well,
I
that's what
think
you got to work for, isn't it?
it is, yeah, it is
Yeah.
exactly. It's a never-ending, ongoing job, really. I think it's important that you mentioned, sort of like like people from the right coming into the movement, which I just find very, very perplexing, very kind of, it's just odd because however you would identify, I mean, you don't need to identify with a particular political spectrum, I suppose, but your views, because you're vegan, because you're in a social justice movement, should automatically be towards what we would call the left. So I don't understand how those people who have interest in right leaning politics could even call themselves vegan, could be in a social justice movement, which is what we are in.
Yeah, well, I mean, this might be one example where that distinction between vegan and plant-based might be relevant.
Yeah.
You never know. But I do share your kind of worries about it, and it seemed that when you get these values coming in, challenging the core values, it stirs up trouble essentially,
Yeah.
and that's what we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I suppose veganism, which, I mean, I don't know how you feel about, I always say veganism is animal rights, because you can't really have one without the other. But the definition of veganism as well seems to, there's a constant debate about it, and the obligations on people within the movement and on activists. So what I picked up one of these your quotes a while. This was in June on social media. You responded to someone who was in the vegan group, who was talking about the plant-based aspect of being vegan, and they were talking about dropping dairy was life-changing. The asthma attack stopped, the weight reduced, and your response to this was, please, I'm begging here, stop misrepresenting veganism. Veganism is a justice-based philosophy with animal liberation at its core. It's not about reducing animal cruelty. That's what the RSPC and welfareism in general does. It pains me to say radical idea reduced to this. So could you maybe sort of kind of like elaborate a little bit on that, please? Because that's something which I'm really concerned about as well.
Yeah, well, obviously there is a dispute about the definition, and of course we have like an official definition. Although you see that came about in the 1970s through to the 1980s.
Yeah.
A lot of people think we've had that since the 1940s, which wasn't true. My favorite definition, as you might know, comes from Donald Watson, and he said that the object of veganism is to oppose the exploitation of sentient life.
Yeah.
Now, I think that concise definition is probably the best one, and that we can use it to build on.
Yeah.
There are other ones from Leslie Cross. And what really happened was that because the people who started our movement, they didn't know they were starting a movement.
Yeah.
They were trying to get a section of the vegetarians to go dairy free, right?
Yeah.
And the vegetarians said no. And so lo and behold, you had 7 or 8 people running a movement, from scratch, right? And so they had to go, wow, And then when you get to the end of the 1940s, Leslie Cross said, do you know, we don't have a definition of veganism. We ought to do something about that, right? And so that's what they started doing in their journal, which is called The Vegan at the time. And so from about 1949 to 1954, they kind of thought out loud in the pages of their journal about what this newfangled movement was. And they declared it to be a philosophy, and they named it veganism. And they said the core values were things like justice and peace. Peace in particular. I call veganism the ultimate peace movement. Because, it was born in the Second World War for a start. So I always like to say that during the Second World War, the vegans declared peace. And, Donald Watson said that we're not going to get anywhere. This is as a species now. They always talked in these grand ways about the species, that veganism is about the moral evolution of humanity, this kind of stuff. But they said we're not going to get anywhere unless we have veganism as being a central part of our peace aims. They were coming to the end of the war, they were thinking about the future, and they thought, right, we need veganism to be a core value based on peace, non-violence, justice, and stuff. And of course, that's still the case. So when it gets reduced to a diet, it's a mischaracterization of what it is. It's a philosophy with, if you like, dietary ramifications, but it's not a diet. And it should never be presented as that.
Yeah. We try to be a great pains to. We cover all aspects of veganism within on our social media and the campaigns that we do to reach as many people as possible. But we always say it's not about the food. The food obviously is an important part of it because everybody needs food, but it's not about the food. It's like your mind kind of like being switched on to the animal use. And I think what you said there about the original definition about being about being based on sentient life, that is it in a nutshell, because sentient life includes humans as well. And I know there's a huge debate about, it only has to be about animals. Well, we are animals as well. We always say that we're about animals. And I know a lot of activists will, really, really disagree with me for saying that, but we are. We do a lot of stuff in our community for humans, and we do a lot of stuff for animals as well. When we're doing our outreach, we always focus on animals. But if someone comes along and talks to us about a human issue, we can still talk to them about that, and then we can still direct them. The issue with Gaza at the moment. Obviously, there's animals suffering in Gaza, but there's also people suffering in Gaza as well. So all these things can be interlinked, and they are intrinsically linked. I just don't understand why. I don't understand how people find it so easy just to focus on animals and not the humans who are there with them as well.
Well, I mean, Gaza obviously is a tragic situation, but something like 97% of our fellow animals have been killed in Gaza
Yeah,
or starved in Gaza. And it's almost like one strong vegan message is that, humans don't have the right to go to war
yeah,
because the ones who suffer the most are our fellow animals, which of course we just arrogantly just regard as collateral damage
yeah,
or don't even count them. But there's always more casualties from the animal side,
yeah,
if you like, and so we don't really have the right to do that,
yeah,
as our species. We need to figure out ways of resolving our problems through dialogue and not reach for the
yeah,
gun. It's the same with so-called pest control. One vegan thing is, that's not the first thing we think of.
yeah,
But of course it is, suddenly you've got a problem or you think you've got a problem and people reach for the poison or reach for the gun,
yeah,
right? And that's not the way,
yeah,
towards a peaceful world. It just
yeah.
isn't,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, taking that what you've just said there a little bit further as well. I mean, we weed in our area, we hand weed because the council have a policy of spraying, putting weed killers down. And obviously we are concerned about the damage to not only the waterways because we're close to the River Tyne, but also to the insect life and bees and, other animals as well. So we do that. So we kind of like look at literally the smallest animal possible and try to help those in a practical way. But we also do things like litter picking as well, and to do and that kind of like brings us on to things like the firework use and the damage.
Yeah, yeah.
So all those things. It's kind of like literally opening up this huge.
Well, I,
Um,
I have to admit, I used to love fireworks. Never really thought about it.
yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, me too. I mean, it's funny how you kind of see things with different eyes, isn't it? I mean, we dread this time of year because obviously fireworks start going off, and we see the rubbish all over the place, and we see it over the river, the pollution, and then we see the animals, the stories about animals and everything. Um,
Well, we do know, don't we, that animal life uh, really thrived in during COVID.
COVID, yeah, it did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it did.
so I mean, like even ocean life,
Mm,
without having all those kind of turbines and propellers and that in the water,
yeah,
it must have been a lot quieter.
yeah,
So whales really benefited from COVID,
yeah,
which is in a really weird way, and it's because we're so noisy. We must be the noisiest primates
yeah.
ever. You know, we just create noise all the time wherever we go.
I spoke to Wendy a few months ago, and we were talking particularly about Wendy McGovern.
Yeah.
Talking particularly about language, and I mean we have kind of touched on it a little bit there, but how do you think we damage animal rights by accidentally or deliberately choosing language which dilute the message? And I'm thinking about things like like particularly for new vegans, those who are coming into the movement and not kind of understanding the importance of language, but also how we as long-term vegans we need to kind of like move with the times as well. For example, we used to say what do we there's no excuse for animal abuse, but now we see there's no excuse for animal use.
Yeah.
So we change that, and that subtle difference is quite a big thing, really. So what do you kind of? I mean, I've
Yeah, I
been to
think
events.
I think abuse is seen as like an in-betweeny kind of
Yeah,
word,
mm,
really. I mean, obviously, the one that gets my goat, to use a non-vegan phrase, is cruelty,
yeah,
because I think that puts us smack bang into the welfare
mm,
paradigm. And as a sociologist,
mm,
I think about cultural speciesism. Now, we're all born as animal welfarists. All kids are born
mm,
and taught don't be cruel, this
yeah,
kind of stuff. But of course, it doesn't mean you can't use them. It
yeah,
means that you shouldn't be cruel while you're using them.
yeah,
And so that becomes a main value. I mean, do you know anybody who doesn't agree with the idea that we shouldn't be cruel to our fellow animals?
yeah,
The problem is that
mm,
what vegans do often is just stick a go vegan message on the end of a don't be cruel
yeah,
message.
yeah,
And there's no cultural connection between those,
yeah,
because don't be cruel
mm,
culturally means free range.
yeah,
and it means things like that, and kind of there must be a way of doing it, or it should be regulated better, or there should be better animal welfare laws. There's no immediate connection to go vegan. And so when you talk about animal rights, that's when there is an immediate connection to go vegan. And so if you don't talk welfare and you talk rights, you get into where you want to go in a conversation much quicker. And you don't get bogged down because everybody will tell you that they're against animal cruelty.
Yeah.
And then you've got all the buts,
But
you know, yeah,
yeah,
So
you might.
I just don't see why we bog ourselves down.
Yeah,
We sound like a militant version of the RSPCA half the
yeah,
time. And
yeah,
there's no need for it. It's not as though we don't have a vocabulary we can
yeah,
use,
yeah,
which is about animal rights or even animal liberation. You
yeah,
don't have to get bogged down in RSPCA language.
yeah. So your message, I suppose, is just to keep it simple, isn't it? Keep it simple and don't sort of. I mean, it's basically just stop animal use, isn't it?
Yeah, don't, yeah, that's right. And kind of like keep it pure really, and also tell the truth. We're not politicians.
Yeah,
We just tell the truth about, our stance is the end of animal use, the end of exploitation
yeah,
on a kind of global level. I mean, that's what the, if you like, the utopian vision of veganism is.
yeah,
I mean, like in a vegan world, I mean, Kathleen Janaway said this in 1992, that if vegan values were to spread, then we would have the end of human warfare, human poverty, and of course our fellow animals would get their liberation,
yeah,
which was an echo from the 1940s,
yeah,
even when Watson said if vegan values were spread, it would represent the greatest peaceful revolution that humanity had ever seen.
yeah,
That's how big they thought in those days. So to reduce it to a diet
yeah,
and to reduce it to the words of the RSPCA,
yeah,
it is not really fair on the people who started our
yeah,
movement,
yeah.
really.
Also, I suppose to reduce it to one particular topic within it, like anti-vivisection or the Hun subs, it's kind of like it's about not one particular animal or one type of particular animal use. It's about all animal use, isn't
No,
it?
you can put that into context, of course. I mean, if you go, we're outside the circus today. We're opposed to animal use. This is a form of animal use, so
Yeah,
therefore we're opposed to it. But next week we'll be doing
yeah,
something else, that kind of
yeah,
thing. So the single issue thing, I think that has kind of broken down a little bit. Although there are some people who will still kind of insist on kind of single issues, but I think most people would possibly focus on veganism.
yeah,
The tragedy is that the bigger groups tend to play safe, and they want, like, I mean, I've got a video about how long it took the national groups to embrace veganism, and even then they wanted to characterize it as a diet because it was safer for them. And then there was a mix and match, vegetarian and vegan
yeah,
together, this kind of stuff. And it was kind of, if you're going to, solve the problems of the third world in terms of starvation,
yeah,
well, there's a vegetarian option. And oh, look at this is a new vegan thing,
yeah,
and it was always a diet. And so the philosophical side of veganism has always had a bad deal, even within the vegan movement. And it's a real shame. And the radicalism of our pioneers has been kicked out now. And so it's kind of old timers like us, and we've got to keep banging the drum, talking about the original values of veganism, because the original values are really great.
yeah,
They had some brilliant ideas, and they were more radical than what we've got. And I think now people are almost a bit scared of it or something. You
yeah,
know, I mean, I thought that when people came into the movement, they would be interested in the history of the movement. A lot of people aren't. They just tell you to go away if you try and tell them about the movement history. I don't know why that is. It seems weird to me.
yeah, it does to me as well. I mean, I think when I first became vegan, I mean, it's like a light bulb kind of like going on, and you suddenly open, you suddenly sort of like have your mind open to all these horrendous, horrendous ways in which we use animals, and you kind of see it everywhere. And then the other side of it is I feel as if I've joined this like real movement for change, and that was quite a while ago. But I don't know. I think maybe new vegans coming in, the kind of like coming in from it's the usual routes to come in from are going to be for, from health, from the environment. They'll come in from some sort of like hook, but actually they stay vegan for the animals. But to me, it's always been about coming into veganism because of the animals. It's not about. I mean, I know we have some people who have come in and actually ended up saying, I shouldn't have. It shouldn't have been about the health part of it. Should have been. It's about this. But I came in for the animals. It's always been about the animals for me. And I think that you do outreach, and you do quite a lot of outreach over where you are. And so, what are the conversations that you have over there? I mean, I'm just curious to see what they're like with like how they compare with the ones we have in Newcastle.
Well, I mean, I always start it with people come up and kind of, what's all this about then?
Yeah,
I say, well, we're a justice-based movement.
yeah,
It was born in the Second World War. It's about peace and
yeah,
non-violence and all this kind of stuff. So you don't start it about, oh, because some people kind of go, oh, well, we don't eat this and we don't eat that and we
yeah,
don't, and I tend to think that's completely the wrong way of doing it.
yeah,
I prefer to talk about what we're for
yeah,
rather than what we're against.
yeah, yeah,
And then the conversation can develop. And whenever the people, and they always do it, whenever they slide into welfare,
yeah,
I bring it back
yeah,
to rights
yeah,
and remind them, well, you're talking welfare again. You see, I've already said that that's not our bag, kind
yeah,
of thing, and it kind of works. We have a lot of people saying things like, oh, I didn't think this conversation was going to go this way.
yeah,
That's because they've already got a preconceived
yeah,
idea
yeah,
about what vegans are. They're going to talk about food, they're going to talk about cruelty,
yeah,
and if you don't agree with them, they're going to call you an abuser.
yeah,
We don't do any of that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have. I would say we have similar conversations, but obviously we don't have your skills, and you're incredibly articulate, and you have the academic background, and I mean, your head just must be exploding. You must have so much knowledge in your head,
Oh, it explodes quite often. Yeah.
which we don't have. But we do, we do get people coming over and saying, "What's all this about?" But we try
But
to,
that's the
yeah,
perfect question, though.
yeah,
It's great when people say that.
yeah, yeah. But we do have people who will say, now and I say this as well, it's not about what we don't do, it's about what we do, what we for, what we promote, what we try to live by rather than what we don't do. Because people will say, oh, you can't eat this, you can't do this, you can't go this. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
look at all the things that we can
The,
do.
the, the best thing to do with that question, because it's a perfect question for us in a way,
Yeah,
is say it's not can't, it's won't.
won't.
It's
Yeah,
it's not,
yeah,
because people say, oh, you can't have
yeah,
this and all that, and I say, well, I could, I know how to chew. It's just that I won't. So always
yeah,
bring it back,
yeah,
and so once you start to get, I suppose, a few kind of tricks of the trade and techniques,
yeah,
you can always bring it back to animal rights. You can always bring it back to the opposition of animal use,
yeah,
the respect for sentient life,
mm,
and all that. And I like to, I suppose, because of the academic thing. Sometimes, if people ask me a question, I say things like, "Well, there's a range of views about that,"
yeah,
and you briefly go through those and say, "Our group is, on the right side of things, so we'll approach it from
yeah,
a rights thing." And I always got a very simple formulation. I say animal rights means that we regard our fellow animals as rights bearers, and that means that when we use them, that's a rights violation. Now, some people say that people are not sophisticated enough to understand that, but that's not true. They are,
yeah.
you
That's
know.
well, to be fair, that's quite a simple, pure way of putting it, really. I mean, I don't think that's, I think most people who we would talk to would understand that and get that.
Yeah,
They might not at that point agree with it, but but I think they certainly understand it.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, like everybody understands human rights
yeah,
to some degree,
yeah,
and then you can say this movement, it kind of gets the idea of rights over the species barrier.
mm,
So you could tackle it that way,
yeah,
you know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of our time now together, so I mean, I could talk to you for absolutely hours.
Yeah, it went quick, didn't it? It went quick.
It went really quick. But I know that, I mean, I also watch you on the time tunnel and I'm still alive with Ronnie as well.
Yeah, one of my
And
stalkers, yeah.
and Wendy. I mean, I love listening to all those talks. I mean, I put them on and when I'm doing some work and everything, and I'm hoping that it kind of like just seeps in, and I kind of like take it in. But it's really really interesting. And I think that, I mean, my advice to new vegans, to get active, but also to research, to do a bit of research on the history. Like people like yourself, but also people who've gone well before you as well. People who have, who kind of, like you said, set up the movement, which they didn't really expect to set up. But it's really important that people know what
it's also a great adventure, Anna, because I mean the views of the founders of our movement were absolutely brilliant,
Yeah.
So why would you not want to learn about it?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to sign off now, and I'm going to say thank you very much to Dr. Roger Yates for giving up his very precious time talking to us today. This is Anna Malia from Northeast Animal Rights saying thank you very much and goodbye.